Hey everybody, and welcome to my channel, Creations by Christine. That's me. So in today's video, I'm going to be teaching you some crochet tips and tricks, hacks, useful things. I just wanted to say, now that Happy Mother's Day has been gone, Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. I ended up getting a beautiful bouquet of flowers from my family. So I just wanted to say Happy Mother's Day. I was busy all day, so I had no time to make a video. But today I do. So let's get right into it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to show you is alternate uses for stitch markers. Sometimes these things will pop open, these will just fall off. I mean, they're cute, they're handy, we need them, but you don't need them. So I'm going to show you here. You can use either a bobby pin, like this, or a piece of scrap yarn like this, or a paper clip. Now I've just done up a little swatch here of single crochets, and I will just show you how it goes. So you just crochet along as normally would, and I keep getting stuck, I'm sorry. And then we remove just like we would. Be careful when you insert them. Sometimes you can split your yarns depending on what yarn you're working with. And then just simply, I bend them a little wee bit like this. Sorry, you can't see, it's not focusing. I bend them up just a little bit like that. And then I slide it into my stitch. And then I twist it around. And get this little piece over your stitch, and then it just kind of sits in there quite nicely. Oh, I've actually hooked my other loop as well. But anyways, moving on. This is just a demonstration. So you carry on crocheting, and we come to our scrap yarn stitch, and we just crochet, make your loop a little bigger, and then just put your hook back in through, pull your little scrap yarn out, and loop it back through. If you want a little bit of extra protection, you can always grab your tails and pull them back through the loop like this, and tighten it up a little bit as well. Okay, and moving on to the, oh, I'm doing the wrong stitch here. Single crochet, not double. We reach our bobby pin, and you can either remove it first or work around it. I choose to work around it. So just push your bobby pin out and right back onto the stitch you want to keep marking. Okay, so tip number 2 is going to be storing your needles. I use the metal ones. I can't use the plastic ones that break them. And conveniently enough, this trick also works for your little stitch markers, your make-up stitch markers. Just take a magnet, doesn't have to be a super strong magnet, and stick them to it. And you can put stitch markers on one side and needles on the other like that, and then stick it in your little sorting container of whichever. Okay, so moving on to tip number 3. Tip number 3 is the button. We all hate the button. It took me a while. I struggled to figure out how to thread a button, because if you see, these are my needles that I use, and although my smallest, yes, will go through, will not go all the way through. And this is one of the larger buttons I use. I use these for my mini backpacks. If you haven't seen that tutorial, I'll put it in the link down below. So clearly this isn't going to work. So my little trick is these guys. Now, if you sew, you know what they are. I don't know what the heck it's called, but if you turn it this way, it looks like a snowman. So I call it a snowman. So we take our snowman and our button, and we pass the snowman through the bottom of the button. And then we take our yarn and pass it through the very fine point wires, and then just pull them back through. Now, I struggled forever trying to figure this out. I'm going to show you again on the other side. You insert snowman through the bottom. Little Mr. Snowman, I'll call him Frosty. And then thread your yarn through the wire on the snowman. And then just pull it back down through just like this. Easy peasy. And then you are ready to thread your button onto whatever you are working on. Now, that tip number 3 and tip number 4, I think I just lost track, but bear with me, there's supposed to be a dozen, so we'll find out. Now, this tip also works along well with the next trick, which is threading a yarn needle. It's very, very stubborn. Holes can be small, but the best way to do it is just fold your yarn in half over your needle like so, and then pinch it and pull it off, and thread it through the eye of your needle, just like that. And it literally works every time, except for this time. I just messed up my yarn. So I'll try it again. And it should go as easily as that. There's one threaded needle. Okay, so moving on. If my numbers are right, tip number 5 is going to be working in the back bump when you're crocheting. So when you're crocheting, you start your work with a chain. Okay, well, we're starting this project with a chain. So we have our chain. I'm just going to chain a few here for sake of swatching for the video. And I'm just going to work with a single crochet. So I've got my chain of whatever, 10 maybe. And usually when you start, you'd be working, you skip the first one and straight into the loop here, right? That looks normal. Well, what we're going to do instead is we're going to take our chain and we're going to flip it like this. You see these little bumps on the back? Let's get my needle here so I can point to them for you. So like right here, 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 here. Those little bumps there, you're going to be working in those bumps instead. So again, I'm doing a single crochet, so instead of going into the second loop here, so my camera would focus, instead of going into the second loop here, I'm going to flip over to the back and go into the second bump. The first bump is right here. This is the second bump. So we're just going to work into that second bump and start chaining as normal. Or sorry, our foundation chain, working our foundation chain as normal. Just going into that back bump. Sometimes it's a little stubborn. I use my finger to kind of shove it through, but if you go a half size up, I'm naturally a tight stitcher, so I probably should have used a different hook for the start of the demonstration, but we can't be perfect. Okay, so when you're working in the back bump like so, it makes, here's the top of my work here. It gives that nice braided effect on the bottom. Look at this. That's the bottom. Instead of having that messy chain. Doesn't that look nice? I think it looks so much better when you start your projects off working in the back chain. Now, I mean, you can't do this technique with every project you have because some of them actually specifically require you to work in certain loops. So, but if you're making something different, there. Now that's the bottom of my work. My camera would focus. Doesn't that look so much nicer? There's the top. It just creates a nice little braided border. Again, I should have used a larger for my foundation chain to avoid that bunching at the bottom, but it happens. Okay, so moving on, I'm just going to keep going on in this little example here. Tip number 6. Okay, so when we're crocheting and we're at the end of our row like so, I'm going to pretend that we're doing double crochets. So we chain 2, turn our work, and we carry on into the second stitch because this counts as our first stitch, like so. Sometimes this is a little, I don't know, it just doesn't look right to me sometimes. So I'm going to teach you guys a little trick. It's called I believe it's called the standing crochet. But when you get to the end of your work like so, all I do is chain 1 and then turn my work. And I'm just going to make this loop slightly larger instead of tight to my needle, or my hook, sorry, like this. Sorry, I say needle because I do knit as well. So slightly larger, and then you're going to pinch on the top of your hook like so that that loop won't move, and you're going to go down around the bottom and grab from behind. You're going to grab your yarn. And of course I'm not able to grab it. There we go, like that. Grab your yarn, bring it back to the front. Now you have 2 loops, and you are going to go back into the first top stitch, whichever you call it, the last stitch, not your chain. Your chain's over here. You're going into here. So you're going to, there's 3, and then you just do like a normal crochet. And it's a thicker start to your work. It doesn't leave those gaps and those holes. Some people even chain 3 at the ends, and I find that leaves even bigger holes in a chain 2, but if you see how it looks, it blends in very, very, very nicely. So that is another thing that I'm pretty sure I've mentioned it in a couple of my videos. My mini backpack tutorial, I use a half double crochet in the lid, and this also works for the half double crochets. If you're making something in half double crochet and you want to make a standing half double crochet instead of chain 2 or chain 3, whichever you chain. I used to chain 2. Now I do it this way. So I'm at the end of my row here. I'm just going to show you real quick with a half double crochet. So that's the end of my row. I chain 1, turn my work, slightly larger loop. Now you don't have to go like crazy excessively large. Like, I mean, that's a normal loop. This is what I mean. Slightly larger loop. Sorry, I'm not in the center of the screen here. Slightly larger loop. Normal loop, slightly larger. So slightly larger loop. And then if my camera will focus, there we go. Around, grab your yarn, come back, and then right into that first stitch, and you just finish it off like a normal half double crochet. And when you come back to the end of your row, you have this loop right here. Come on, focus, there we go. This loop right here is your last loop, which will lead me to tip number 7, maybe? If you bear with me, I'm going to go with that. If you find yourself, whether you're a beginning crocheter or an advanced crocheter like myself, if you find your work starts to kind of angle in this way or angle out like this, you're either losing stitches on your ends if it's going in, or you're adding an extra stitch somewhere where you shouldn't. Most likely it's on the end. So if you are a newer crocheter, it is very, very handy to mark your beginning and end stitches. So that was my beginning stitch. And this is my end stitch, like I was pointing out earlier right here, these 2 loops. So I'm just going to use these stitch markers here. And then you will never lose count of which is your first and your last stitch. So I'll just go through here with finishing off the half double crochet. Now all 3 of these stitches, if you don't know what you're doing about crochet, are in one of my other videos. Sorry, that was my book that just fell over there. I made a beginning crochet tutorial, and I will also link that in the description down below. And it teaches you how to make a slip knot. It teaches you how to chain. It teaches you how to do the single crochet, as well as the half double crochet and the double crochet. So here we are at the very end of the row where my last stitch is marked out very clearly, so I know I won't miss it. And then we do our chain 1. I'm just going to show again the standing stitch. Now I'm not quite sure how it would work. I'm guessing a larger, slightly larger loop and wrap it around twice for a triple crochet or more, but I've only ever really worked with the 1. I don't usually go any more than a double crochet. So again, around the back like so, slightly larger loop around the back into the first stitch, and whichever stitch you're choosing to do. I just did a double crochet, and then you can take your stitch marker and right away mark that first stitch right there. That way you won't forget how many you have. And again, the very last one is marked as well, so I know clearly here I have 2, 4, 6, 8 stitches out of 9 completed. So my work will always be 9 stitches wide. Okay, moving on. I am going to take all of this apart and explain to you tip number 8. Now, tip number 8 is, and if you don't know, for newer crocheters, we call this frogging when we rip something out. F-R-O-G, frogging. I have no idea what it stands for. I think it's because it sounds like a frog, and they say rip it. Rip it? I don't know. Anyways, that's my theory. Tell me if I'm right or wrong in the comments below. Okay, so when you are making, say, a baby blanket or anything with a long chain, and you know you gotta chain forever and ever and ever and ever, sometimes it's very handy to get no twists in your chains. I simply loosen off to pull out my hook, and I'll just slip this first bump, just the first bump, not 2 of them, onto my hook, and then put my running yarn back on the right way. And then you just chain, and you need to do about 4 or 5 before you can do this, otherwise you won't be able to pull your hook through. It'll be too tight. So you just keep chaining, and when it gets long enough, you can just kind of stick it back here and forget about it. And then you make your super duper long chain, however long it may be. Now, I'm just going to stop here for time purposes. And now, look, there's absolutely no twists in my chain. I can just slip stitch into that beginning and chain however many you're doing, or standing crochet. And there you have it. You have a perfect ring with no loops. And then you just carry on like you would. Sorry, I got my little tail out of the way here. There we go. Okay, so you have your chain here with no twists in it. Beautiful. And you can just carry on going in the top bump. This will also work with the back bump trick. I use this when I'm making my mittens. It gives it a nice edge to it. This yarn keeps splitting, I'm sorry. strange yarn. If you guys are wondering, I'm using Easy Knit Perfection yarn. It's an acrylic, but it's like ropey. 100% acrylic in baby blue. Anyways, back to what I was doing. Okay, the next trick I'm going to teach you, which I believe is tip number 9, is the invisible decrease. Now, usually this is done when working in the round, but I've just made a sample flat swatch here of a single crochet just to show you for video's sake. And to do an invisible decrease, what you're going to want to do is you're going to go in the front loop only. Now, we call these front loop, back loop. Whatever is facing away from you is the back loop. When you normally crochet, you go through both loops, but we call this front loop. So if you see in a pattern, they say front loop only, that's the front loop. It'll be as FLO, and in the back loop right here on patterns, it'll be usually marked as BLO, back loop only. Okay, so anyways, there's a little bonus tip for you. So we're gonna go front loop only. Now, just like you normally would with a single crochet, but you're not going to finish the stitch. Instead, you're going to pull that loop through and then carry on right to the next front loop only. Yarn over, pull through, so you have 3. And then you're not even going to yarn over. You don't need to do that. All you're going to do is just finish it off like a single crochet. And that's what they call the invisible decrease. Now let's give it a extra 2 stitches here, and you can see what it looks like in there. See, it's right there. That's 2 stitches into 1. And you can see it on the back slightly. That's why I say it's usually for working in the round. But it's a sneaky way to sneak in a decrease. So I'm just going to finish off this row. And we will carry on with, I think we're at 10 now. Tip number 10. Forgive me, I'll count them. I'll put it in the description below. But we're doing a seamless color change. So sorry, I already started my round here. So if you're doing it in a row like so, what you're going to want to do is at the very end of your row, before you chain or anything, that's where I've stopped here, is you can grab your other color of yarn. I'm just carrying on with the same brand of the Easy Knit Perfection yarn. Okay, and we are going to find our new end. And all we're going to do is loop it over the hook and pull through, leaving a fairly long tail. So I'm just using blue for the sake of it being here, and I'm not even going to cut it because I'm going to use it in another project. So you're going to yarn over, and this is my short tail. We're just going to pretend this is cut. That's my short tail, and this is my working yarn, and just pull through, and that's your chain 1. So then we flip, and into the second stitch we go. And you can also keep your tails, drag your tails with you as you go. I'm just not cutting my yarns right now because I plan to use these for the projects. And then once you get a couple stitches going, just pull that purple one taut until it almost disappears down in there, because your blue one there is your chain 1. And there. It's going all wonky because of the decrease, but that's the start of the row there. These are tails. Okay, so I just wanted to show you guys again at the end of this row. I'm just 2 stitches away from the very end. And I'm just going to switch back to purple real quick just to show you guys how it works. So this is my last stitch here. And I grab my purple to finish the stitch. I'm just yarning over. This is my working yarn here over top, and my tail we're pretending is there. So that will finish off that stitch there. And we can pull the blue string a little more taut. And we chain 1, turn our work. This blue one doesn't want to stay tight. and then just start crocheting directly across. And just going to pull my tails a little tighter here so it doesn't look like a complete mess. I'll show you the front of my work. If I can get it to go. There we go. This is the front of my work. So you could see this loop here is the top of your last row. That is your first stitch there. The second one I did, and the third one right there. 1, 2, 3. And my very, very, very last tip is, if you don't have a yarn bowl, find yourself one of these binder clips. And I use just a decorative box. Sorry, it's kind of hard to show you. It's a little close. Just a normal decorative box. I just clip it on the edge. And then you take your yarn and you thread it through the pegs. And this works very well when it's a ball of yarn. You don't want it to be rolling all over, and you can't find a yarn bowl you like or whatever. But you want to thread it from inside to out, so when you're working on it, you're pulling this way. And then you just put your ball in a box, and it stays there. Now, if you got a heavy ball and it's rolling around, you can put something else in there to keep it weighted down, or just use a heavier glass bowl. So again, thank you for stopping by. I hope you really enjoyed these 12 tips and tricks for crocheting. I just wanted to say before I let you guys go, there's 2 days left for my giveaway, so make sure you enter into that. I will leave a link down below. I will also leave it on the end screen. And make sure you give this a thumbs up and you subscribe if you haven't already. And make sure everybody stays safe and has a great week. And I will see you soon. Bye.